Welcome to the presentation of Honoring Tradition While Embracing Innovation. It was prepared by Dr. Andrew Sears, President of City Vision University, and presented by Richard McMillen, Vice President of Partner Care for the university. We see a biblical pattern repeating itself in the nation of Israel. Israel turns to God for help. God redeems and blesses Israel. Then Israel becomes complacent under blessings. Israel then turns to other gods. They stop loving the true God as well as others. Israel goes into bondage and then turns to God for help. Quite a cycle they go through. We've also seen a cycle in the rescue mission movement. It starts with a mission being founded to seeing needs that are around them. The founder has a burden, and it is like putting new wine in new wineskins, like we see in Luke 5:37. After a time, the mission outgrows the capacity of the founder and then is in the need to scale to up resources and staff. They may outgrow the capacity of their staff, and then there's need to professionalize. The growth can take them into some uncharted territories in their ministry. A book recommended by Tom DeVries, the president of Citygate Network, is Canoeing the Mountains, which describes some of the challenges that ministries can face entering a future that is not clear. Another reflection is that of the economist Thomas Sowell, who said, "Many of today's problems are a result of yesterday's solutions." Our goal during this time is to provide you with a bit of a GPS for these transitions. This presentation was created to help meet a dual crisis. We desire to stay true to Scripture, and at the same time, there is a need for innovation in our ministries. These principles are in tension. We live in a world that is black and white versus gray. There are some things that need to be black and white where we need firm boundaries. This is why Christianity is a relationship, not just a set of black and white rules. On the left side would be fundamentalists, while the right side would be calling yourself Christian, but essentially living in a secular view. The potential outcomes we see for ministries serving the poor and addicted in the US without better navigation is 25% of them will successfully adapt, 25% will secularize, 25% will become irrelevant by not adapting, and 25% will not need to adapt because of limited changes in the environment. Why is it that Christian nonprofits secularize? One reason is that very few leaders of Christian nonprofits study parachurch history. It is the lessons of church and parachurch history that show us that we need to take the secularization threat seriously. Secularization almost always happens unintentionally and by causes that are complex and not obvious. For instance, the sociological and organizational cultural implications of professionalizing staff or a board composition primarily of Christian business people is a contributor. To avoid the pitfalls, it requires deep training in organizational culture, management, and leadership from a Christian perspective. Secular training doesn't cover the key issues. Secularization normally doesn't happen overnight. It happens over generations, so it is difficult for a single leader to observe the long-term consequences of their actions. This can include items like accepting government funding or focusing on a seeker-sensitive church. The ministry secularization pattern has similarities to the biblical pattern we looked at earlier. God initiates a new movement. God redeems and blesses the movement. The movement experiences blessings. The organization becomes affluent. Often at this stage, the organization becomes dominated by high-end professionals on the staff and the board without strong countercultural tendencies and values. Society's cultural values change. The organization must change or be marginalized. There can be extremely strong sociological and funding pressures to conform to changes. Friends and other work environments support societal changes. It becomes extremely difficult for those who have experienced success to give that up to support an organization that is marginalized. All this leads to the organization secularizing. The pattern is difficult to perceive because it happens over decades or, in some cases, centuries. Now, there can be some intervention points so that the course can be changed and the organization can remain true to its original mission. Dr. Sears believes that part of the role of City Vision University, which grew out of the rescue mission movement, is as an innovation hub similar to the relationship of Sanford and Silicon Valley. The problem is that as soon as you use the word innovation in ministry, people get worried that you might change things that shouldn't change, like our doctrinal foundation or core theology. There are timeless truths from the Bible about God, our relationship to Him, and His purposes in the world. So, what can change and what remains the same across generations for ministry? One of the best books on this is Tim Keller's Center Church. Keller takes these timeless truths of what we should believe and helps us to see through practical theology, to have a theological vision. It becomes a faithful restatement of the gospel with rich implications for life, ministry, and mission in a particular culture at a moment in history. All that ties in with our ministry expression and what we do or how the gospel is expressed in a particular ministry in our community at a point in time. We designed a course at City Vision University to help address some of the problems occurring. Many of the challenges faced by ministries are due to lack of strategic alignment of enacted values with espoused values. A lack of expertise in the local organization is an occasion for the disconnect to occur. It takes dual expertise in developing new wineskins and recontextualizing with a new theological vision. It can be difficult and dangerous. Again, we have a tension between the tradition of understanding and how and why against the innovation of emerging trends and models. It requires the development of a dual expertise. The danger at this point of need for new wineskins is misalignment. Again, this is illustrated in accounts in the book Canoeing the Mountains by Todd Bolsinger, as he compares it to the explorations of Lewis and Clark to find a water passage across the nation, and they found mountains instead. Lewis and Clark had their traditions to help them, but they needed to innovate. New movement happens when someone aligns a new theological vision and strategy with what God is doing in a particular context in a way that enables it to spread. This is illustrated in the innovation in movements, perhaps by a cultural cluster in coastal cities, smaller cities, more rural towns, or liberal/conservative locations. Or it may happen by functions such as Christian recovery, direct mail, thrift stores, social enterprises, HR, or aftercare. We have seen innovations in several areas of rescue missions in the last generation. There is a diffusion of the innovation across missions. You have those who are the innovators who begin a new program or technique. Then you have the early adopters who will try it before others are ready to venture out. Next, you have the early majority, where many are adopting the innovation. Those are followed by the late majority, and last of all, the laggards. What possible innovations are needed in this generation? Is there need for cultural adaptations in post-Christian cities, innovation in major donors and planned giving, values aligned professionalization or program innovation, and aftercare? The Overton window is a model that describes the range of ideas considered acceptable in our discussions at a given time. Every organization and culture has an Overton window of the norms and the limits to debate. This Overton window occurs in our discussions between tradition and innovation/change. On the tradition side, we are less comfortable with change. We have more conservative theology. We listen to leaders within the tradition. We Myers-Briggs fall into a Myers-Briggs temperament of sensing and judging, and tend to be people who are in operations or accounting. This is all of the traditional side of the Overton window focused on avoiding secularization. On the entrepreneurial side of the Overton window, we focus on the need for change. We are more comfortable with change. Our theology is moderate. We listen to leaders outside the tradition. We fall into the Myers-Briggs temperament, intuition, and perceiving. We are entrepreneurs. This brings us to the Christian truth in tension. It can be and versus or. On the innovation side, do we risk irrelevance in not keeping up with a rapidly changing society, or do we risk secularization? Is it likely that it is likely that 100 rescue missions may secularize in the next generation? What do you see as the biggest areas of innovation needed among rescue missions in the next generation? What do you worry about where mission/ministries in the larger may lose their way and secularize? City Vision University has a number of courses in operationalizing values and avoiding mission drift. They fit together like a puzzle for the CEO and executive leadership in aligning strategy with theology and values, or creating the strategic plan, or for a program executive who wants to see counseling approaches and life transformation. One side deals with the how, the skills, and completed need, the nuts and bolts, if you will. The other side deals with the why, the values, or heart of the organization. All of this is tied with Bible and theology courses. We highly recommend that executive leadership consider taking the Aligning Strategy with Theology and Values course to prepare your organization for what you are facing today and in the future. This QR code will lead you to a mission drift checklist that we've prepared that will help you examine many areas where missions have drifted. The checklist covers 77 critical areas to avoid mission drift and provides links to additional resources that you can review further. This next QR code provides a link to a template for a complete plan for avoiding mission drift. You will find a complete outline of things that need to be included in your plan. There are a number of tips on avoiding secularization. Do you have the policies in your hiring that will help you avoid secularization? Have your documents been reviewed to follow best practices? Is your organization in a professionalizing stage? What strategies do you have to offset the secularizing tendency of this? Is your program strategy aligned with your theological vision? Are you training program staff in Christian integration in their fields? Are you diversifying your funding to maximize resiliency? Are you avoiding or being very cautious about government funding? Have you developed an extended theological vision for your ministry? Do you need senior values aligned practical theology expertise on your staff? Have you considered the City Vision University course of Aligning Strategy with Theology and Values? Another resource is the Alliance Defending Freedom. Their recommendations include a free guide and membership information, the importance of having a number of significant statements in your policies or bylaws, including the statement of faith, statement of marriage and sexuality, statement of the sanctity of human life, statement of final authority for matters of faith and conduct, a religious mission statement, and a code of Christian conduct. And having particular documents in your policies and procedures on religious employment criteria, signed statement of faith, religious job description, facility use policy, and emphasis on religious character throughout the organization. There are strategic options you have to professionalize without compromising values. This chart shows the frontier of staff quality from hiring program graduates to promoting staff from within to hiring professionals externally. This often follows the earlier cycle we mentioned of going from founding to scaling to professionalizing. City Vision University has been able to help missions by providing intensive training to program grads, to staff hired from within. Also, we've provided intensive value training when hiring professionals. All of this contributes to decreasing the secularization risk and increasing staff training by 200 to 400%. Another way to look at your ministry values is with the Wesleyan quadrilateral. This takes a look at your ministry cultural center or your core competencies. Consider assigning a percentage as to how much your organization is dependent in each of the four areas. You can also use this to create a staff development plan so that you can have a balance in each area and your areas of functioning. In hiring under Scripture, are they required to agree with your statement of faith? In tradition, do you prioritize hiring those with conservative theology? In experience, do you have an increased emphasis on competency? In reason, do you emphasize hiring staff with more education as the organization gets longer? You can follow through on the other areas listed. Coming back to the Wesleyan quadrilateral, an imbalance of emphasis is one area can create secularization. If the staff and board are dominated by high-end professionals, or leadership is uneducated on historical secular trends, or leadership has limited training in discerning theological vision. Ministries can also be overly pragmatic and reverse the order where ministry expression is the beginning point rather than having a doctrinal foundation or core theology as the start. For a movement to continue to grow without secularizing, we need to collectively build a vibrant, balanced culture of innovation and resist secularization to navigate the transition. Other books you may find helpful to avoid secularization are Mission Drift by Peter Greer and Chris Horst. It covers a portion of the dangers of mission drift. Integrative Approaches to Psychology and Christianity is a book with 5 paradigms of relationships between psychology and Christianity. The Soul of the American University discusses the changing roles of Christianity shaping American higher education and the drifts that have occurred. Another consideration is the theological pyramid to distinguish between essential doctrines and those that are matters of personal interpretation. An interdisciplinary approach aids in developing balanced vision and value statements. Studying secularization is an interdisciplinary field of biblical studies, theology, church, and parachurch history, and cultural studies/sociology. Our vision is to serve as an innovation hub that radically transforms the effectiveness of ministries serving the poor and addicted while preserving their core values. Part of the vision is to serve as an aftercare partner program and an innovation hub for aftercare and program practices. Another is to serve as an innovation and training hub among staff to enable ministries to professionalize while retaining core values. In addition, our goal is to be a primary source for thought leaders out of rescue missions and similar organizations to enable the movements to continue in innovation while preserving their core values. There are key innovations needed in this generation in cultural adaptation, in post-Christian cities, in major donor and planned giving, in values-aligned professionalization, and in programs and aftercare. City Vision University can partner with your organization in aftercare with our Wounded Healers Aftercare Partnership Program, in staff training with all of the City Vision University programs, plus our Innovation Hub for staff training, with thrift store staff in our Retail Management Certificates, with food services staff in our Food Services Management Certificate, with development and fundraising staff in our Nonprofit Fundraising Certificate, with internal staff and client training programs in our City Vision University Credit Recognition Program. There are just a few additional items we want to mention in our appendix. The Aligning Strategy with Theology and Values course is one of our capstone courses and should be considered. Be aware of the risk of various funding and support streams. They are rated here from high risk to low risk. Government funding, secular foundation and corporate grants, positive PR with local news agencies, nonprofit Christian donors not familiar with the depth of the religious nature of the mission, local zoning cooperation with the city, wealthy and upper middle class Christian donors, middle class and below Christian donors, loss of tax exempt status, earned income, Christian-based donations, especially evangelical, tithes for churches, being legally allowed to exist. There are also considerations in acculturation, assimilation, and biblical engagement. Is it important to develop relationships with the larger society? Is it important to maintain one's Christian identity and community? Assimilation can lead to secularization. How do we deal with biblical engagement, being in the world but not of the world? Marginalization, such as cultural Christians who do not attend church. Separation can be seen as fundamentalism. Reinhold Niebuhr's book, Christ and Culture, outlines 5 approaches in Christian relationship with culture: Christ and culture, Christ and culture and paradox, Christ transformer of culture, Christ above culture, and Christ of culture. It is important to consider how each position views the doctrine of creation, fall, and redemption. A great case study is the Springs Rescue Mission in the book, Meeting Homelessness with Hope, One Community's Response. It has writings from several thought leaders in the services provided to the homeless. Another case study is the experience of St. Matthew's House in Naples, Florida. They grew from a $2 million budget to a $40 million in about 15 years. They had a very strong staff program, graduate training program. They had 55 students with City Vision in 5 years, provided 46,000 people hours of training, developed a $100,000 education fund for clients, invested in internal staff and client training, and many program graduates became senior leaders both in St. Matthew's House and other missions. A scriptural case study is Engineering Ministries International. Their structure developed future leadership through a program with 10 to 20 full-time fellows globally each year. They became a 501c3 religious order. Their training was a major investment in values alignment for the Fellows program, including 13 to 18 hours of training each week. Half of the training was internally developed, a significant portion of training outsourced through City Vision partnership. They required courses in theology, Bible interpretation, New Testament, in addition to other values aligned courses. They developed a commissioning program for parachurch, religious order counterpart to ordination, but less intensive, but ensured a stronger alignment of values. Traditional case studies would include the Bowery Mission and the Salvation Army. The Bowery Mission, the third oldest rescue mission in the U.S., they took over the operations of the oldest mission in the U.S., Water Street Mission, now called the New York City Rescue Mission. And then the Salvation Army. There are 10 plus current excellent histories of the Salvation Army. They've maintained tradition through policies, procedures, and culture. They require all officers to be ordained, aligned with denominational values, and to attend 2 years of their schooling. City Vision University's ministry education strategy is built on the Bible, that builds core theology and doctrine, that builds practical theology, that helps develop a theological vision, that brings about a strategic alignment with the theological vision, which also brings balance in scripture, tradition, experience, and reason. We hope you have found this presentation on honoring tradition while embracing innovation